Hello, everyone, and welcome to this episode of Pod Save Chocolate. My name is Clay Gordon. I'm your host, and today, I got 12 seconds into it before my first stutter. Today, we're going to be examining Barry Callebaut and the situation that it's in, and whether or not it's a company in crisis. But before I jump into that exploration, I want to remind everybody that this episode of Pod Save Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, is sponsored by the members of The Chocolate Life. And you can go over to The Chocolate Life right now. Here's the homepage, and you can click on the green button up here. It will say join if you're not signed in. And you can go sign up for a free membership or a premium membership. All the support that you can give is greatly appreciated, and what keeps these episodes of Pod Save Chocolate coming to you. And I do want to point out to everyone that you can go into the live chat on YouTube, or the comments are LinkedIn and Facebook, and we will get your comment or question up on the screen. And if you do have just a quick shout out, where in the world are you connecting from? You can get that up on the screen, and I will give you the shout out. Now, I've added things. There's a little gray area you've noticed in the lower right-hand corner now. That's the live comment stream, so you'll see your comments. I don't have to necessarily just go click on them to show them. And with that, let's get into the topic of today's episode, which is Barry Callebaut in crisis. Is it the end of a dynasty? And for every episode of Pod Save Chocolate, I put together a post. And this is the post for today's episode. You can go, and it's the run of show, links to watch things. And there's, if you're a member, there's a discussion area at the bottom, so we can continue discussion after the live stream is over. And I apologize for the scheduling misinformation. I wasn't paying attention, so we are hosting this at the regular time, not at the time that it was posted on LinkedIn. So just a quick update there. And so let's talk about that question. Why are we having this discussion at all? And people who follow me regularly know that I get a lot of different email, and I subscribe to a lot of newsletters, and this showed up in my feed recently. It's from a German business magazine called Inside Paradplatz. And so it's a finance news from Zurich. And I did not provide the direct link to this page, because this page sets over 200 cookies. Many of them are ad tracking cookies, and I didn't want to subject everybody to all of those ad tracking cookies. And so what I did, it's in German. And so what I did is I used the fact that I'm working in this browser called Dia, and I asked Dia to translate the page using ChatGPT in this particular case, and it gave me this headline. And then using the fact that Dia can go and directly ask questions. So I'm down here in the lower right-hand corner. What I can do is I can type in something like the word research, which is like deep think, and then I can ask it a question. And so here's what the article has to say in general in English. So it says that the Barry Callebaut CEO is provoking a max exodus of top talent. Right? And what's that all about? And the indicator, or one of the indicators of the challenges that Barry Callebaut faces, is that the stock has gone from 2,400 Swiss francs 4 years ago to 970 Swiss francs when this article was published. It's a little higher than that now. And the blame, according to the article, can be put right at the feet of the new CEO, Peter Feld. And the question is why? So it says here, Feld has driven away or pushed out over 80% of Barry Callebaut's long-serving managers. Among them are veterans with 25 or more years of experience, right? And according to a source inside, which I think is accurately portraying what's going on, the chocolate business is built on closeness and trust with customers. Companies like Nestle do business with people they've known for years. So let's go figure out what all this means. But before I do, what you'll see is I created the article with a question mark. It says Callebaut in crisis, the end of a dynasty. or Dynasty. And there is an informal law in news headline writing called Betteridge's law. It's named after Ian Betteridge. I believe he coined it in the mid 1990s, although the idea has been around much longer than that. And Betteridge law says if a headline ends in a question mark, the answer is no. Right. So I do not know that this is the end of a dynasty. But what we have here is a confluence of events, which is facing Barry Callebaut, and it is both a microcosm and a macrocosm of what the chocolate industry is going through at the moment. So, what can we learn from what it is that Callebaut is going through right now, and what are the lessons that we can take away, and that other companies can take away from what it is that's going on? I think, which is a valid line of exploration. And so, let's go take a look at it. So, one of the things that I did is I asked Dia to do some research on the history of Barry Callebaut. But before I get there, let's go back to my run of show. So the CEO provokes mass exodus of top talents, and why do critics postulate, or what is it that critics suggest could be the Feldian? So Peter Feld is the current CEO. What might be the Feldian root cause of the decline? And the answer is an effort which is called BC Next Level. And so BC Next Level posits 3 axioms. And let me get this a little larger so you can see it. So BC Next Level posits 3 axioms. Number 1 is simplify Barry Callebaut, whatever that means, to advance digitalization across the group. So what they want to do is they want to take analog processes and processes that don't necessarily involve non-human intermediaries. So digitalization might be adding AI into the processes, getting things which are currently managed in spreadsheets and in disparate ERP systems into a single system. Maybe point of contact being a customer point of contact might first be an online form or something like that, as opposed to a person. So that might be what significantly advanced digitalization across the group means. And then thirdly, put the business close to our customers and our markets. And one of the things that, for a big company like Barry Callebaut, right? So it's the largest business-to-business chocolate company in the world, right? What does it mean to put the business closer to our customers and our markets? And as far as I'm concerned, that is a personal touch. So getting closer means somebody associated with the company gets to know your business, not an AI chatbot, right? This is a high touch business. Selling chocolate industrially is a high touch business, as the article in Inside Bradplatz mentioned. People want to work with people that they've worked with for decades. So if I have a country manager so that I've been buying chocolate from, or I can connect to on a regular basis, and I've been doing that over the course of 20 years, I want to have that relationship, and I want to continue to rely on that relationship. And those relationships no longer exist in many cases. Personally, I can say that everybody, with perhaps one exception, so almost everybody that I have dealt with at Barry Callebaut at the senior level, so the global VP of marketing, the global head of innovation, all of these people are no longer at the company, right? And I don't get any correspondence from the company anymore, whereas I used to have these relationships and conversations with people, and they've disappeared. And my experience is no different in that respect from many, many big customers. So to achieve the goals of simplifying the group, advancing digitalization across the group, and putting the business closer to customers' market, right? What the current CEO, Mr. Feld, is doing is hiring hundreds of specialists in digital marketing and strategic roles while trimming the tenured staff, while firing people, right? Or letting them go, or giving them early retirement packages, or whatever incentives are being given to get veterans to leave the company, and streamlining the layers of management. So this has led, according to the Prodplatz article, to what is characterized as a major leadership crisis. So what does it say? Feld has driven away or ousted over 80% of long-serving managers. And I'm just restating what I've done. So the question becomes, will Barry Callebaut survive? And if so, what will the company look like in 5 years? What will the company look like in 10 years? So let's take a look at the stock price. So this is the 5-year stock price. It's at Yahoo Finance. And what we can see is, well, let me go to, there's an interactive version here. So let's go to the live version. What I'm going to say is, if you get, and so I turned off my VPN so I can improve the response time. If you see an ad here and it says click to continue, do not. This is clickbait, and they're looking to sell you antivirus software. So don't. I've already done it accidentally. So don't click on it. So here we have an interactive chart, and what we can see in the last month is that the stock has been fairly volatile. Its low was within the last couple of weeks. It's gone up a little bit and it's down. And what we might want to do is scroll down to the news to find out why, or what sort of news might be influencing the price. And there's no news within the last week or so that will give us any indication of why the price has rebounded from a low of around 970 up into a little over 1,000, or it's causing it to go down. So we really can't understand what it is that's going on, which, at least from a news perspective, might be having an influence on the stock price. However, what you may want to do is go take a look at this story down here, which is that institutional owners may consider drastic measures as the stock tanks. So that might be something to go take a look at. And I've done a little research on that topic. But what we've got here is we've got a really volatile stock price. We've got, if we go to the 5-year price, we can see that almost exactly 4 years ago, this is the 23rd of August in 2021, we have a stock price that's up at 2,346 Swiss francs. And today it's at 1,050. And so if you are an investor in Barry Callebaut, or you're looking to see what it is that's going on in the history, you're going to go, oh my gosh, what it is that's going on. And obviously the stock dropping by half is an indicator of investor confidence, number one, but it also reduces access to cash. I mean, one of the reasons why a company goes public is access to money, and relatively cheap access to money. And the stock, tanking by 50% over the course of 4 years. And it's gone down really, really quickly since this date, which is less than a year ago. Bang, that's a pretty steep decline in less than a year. You need to wonder what it is that's going on. So go take a look at that. Again, this is part of the process you might want to take part of the process you might follow when you've got a piece of news and you're going, hey, what's the heck's going on here? What am I going on? What's behind the news? So in this case, Barry Callebaut is a public company, and what can you learn from looking at the stock ticker and what the analysts are saying and what the news is saying around it? So that's why this link is here. You can take whatever time you want. But I did, using Dia, asked it for some information about Barry Callebaut. And I knew some of the outline of this, but I've got some details here. So I do know that Barry Callebaut was created as the result of a merger between two companies, the French company Cacao Barry and the Belgian company Callebaut. And that was done in the mid-1990s. But what I wasn't really aware of, although I knew the history of Cacao Barry as a French company, was that Cacao Barry was founded in 1842 by an English trader, Charles Barry, who set up a cocoa import firm in France. And by 1911, the company had moved from trading beans to making chocolate. This 1911 number is fairly interesting. I did a recent episode of Pod Save Chocolate or is it Pod Save Chocolate? No, I'm writing an article about the changing nature of cocoa sourcing. which will be published later this week. And we're talking about what happened in the late 1890s, early 1900s, just prior to World War I, which at this point wouldn't have been on anybody's radar. But it turns out that this period around 1908, 1909, 1911 turns out to be pretty important in the history of cocoa trading and chocolate making. And one of the things that I haven't explored is that there's a connection between this 1911 date and what was going on with the Cadbury, Fry's, and Rowntree. So the Quaker companies who are dominating the cocoa chocolate industry in the UK. There might be a connection. And it's an English trader. So, gotta go explore that. So Callebaut, it says here, was founded in 1850 as a brewery in Wieze, Belgium. I've been to Wieze. I have been to the factory. It is the largest chocolate factory in the world. It's enormous. The infrastructure is amazing. And it's a really, really tiny town. And so you've got these big trucks, number one, container trucks that are bringing in cocoa beans from the port, probably in Antwerp. And then you have big tanker trucks that are taking liquid chocolate and liquid cocoa butter, and they're transporting to customers, maybe to I don't know if there's a rail yard in the back. There could be, but there's the really big trucks on really tiny streets. It's a lovely little town, but it just so happens to be in a relatively rural place in Belgium, and it is the largest chocolate factory in the world. But Callebaut was founded in 1850 as a brewery. The plant was converted to chocolate in 1911. So I'm not sure if there's any coincidence there in the 1911 date. Again, that's something I will research. They started perfecting couverture recipes in the 1920s, and in 1958 pioneered bulk liquid chocolate transport. And that might be the innovation that propelled Callebaut into the forefront of the industry. Right now, there's a guy by the name of Klaus Jacobs. He is an heir to the Jacobs coffee family. That coffee family built a chocolate and coffee powerhouse, Jacobs Suchard AG, selling the majority of the company to Philip Morris in 1990. That gave Jacobs the money to acquire and orchestrate the merger of Callebaut and Cacao Berry in 1996, and at the same time relocated the headquarters of the company to Switzerland, to Zurich, and then going public in 1998, which is why we have access to this chart. So that's a little bit of the history. So the Jacobs family, who has been around for a long time, I need to find out when the Jacobs coffee dynasty was founded. I'll go put that as a note to go add to my results here. But it turns out that this company, even though it is brand new as Barry Callebaut in 1996, it is the merger of two companies whose history stretched back into the mid 1800s, right, as relative powerhouses in France and in Belgium. And the owner, the majority owner, the guy who orchestrated the merger, comes out of a history of coffee and chocolates with Jacobs, the coffee family, and Suchard chocolate, and engineering their merger as well. So that's a little bit of history. I mean, so this company has been around. It's been an innovation. It's been an innovator, at least Barry Callebaut has. And going into this next section about the CEOs, people may or may not know that since 2007, or between 2017 and 2022, I was invited as a journalist to the major new product launches of Barry Callebaut Group. The first one was in Shanghai in 2017, and that was the launch of Ruby chocolate. So I was there in 2017 when Barry Callebaut announced to the world about Ruby chocolate. So I was an invited guest. I was not paid a fee to attend, but my expenses to attend the event were covered. Right? And the same thing is true when I went to the Hidden Persuaders in Cocoa and Chocolate event at ISM in Cologne in 2018. The same thing is true when I was invited to the launch of Whole Fruit in 2019 in San Francisco. And then in 2022, there was a little hiatus during COVID. In 2022, when I was in Venice for the launch of second generation chocolate. right? And so all of those things, all of those events would have been under the stewardship of two different CEOs, Antoine de Saint-Affrique, right, as well as Peter Boone. And I would have had the opportunity. I, right, I would not. It's not that I had the opportunity, but I was able to meet in person Mr. Saint-Affrique at the first three of those events. So I met him in Shanghai, I met him in Cologne, and I met him in San Francisco, and that I would have had, then I did actually spend some time with Peter Boone in Venice for the second generation. And so I do have that connection, and so I'm aware of what's going on. One of the things that I haven't seen is I haven't seen any recent announcement. So since Mr. Feld came to his position as the CEO, I haven't seen any new product announcement which rises to the level of the new product announcements like Ruby and second generation chocolate and whole fruit. Now the entire whole fruit enterprise with inside Barry Callebaut is now a part of what's called Cabos Naturals, and you can purchase some of the products that were debuted in 2019 as part of the Cabos Naturals product line. Not the entire line that was introduced in 2019, but based on market reaction, you can buy some things. And I did a post on Pod Safe Chocolate about some of those Cabos Naturals products. So what's also really, really interesting about this is, and I think that this plays into things, is that I don't think that Ruby has been the global success that Barry Callebaut hoped it will be. Um, there has been pretty good uptake in Japan. I don't know what the uptake has been in China, but the uptake in Europe and the uptake in the United States has been very slow. And I'm certainly it's low compared with the expectations that Callebaut had for these products at the time that they were launched. Hidden Persuaders is not something that I have seen at all. The flavor wheels that Callebaut developed as a part of the Hidden Persuaders launch are nowhere to be seen in the marketplace, so they're not that influential, even though the research is really interesting. And there's a lot, if you're interested in how to taste chocolate and how to describe what you're tasting, the book Hidden Persuaders in Cocoa and Chocolate, which is available on Amazon, as I recall, and is something that you want to take a look at. It was introduced in 2018, and it hasn't been the success. And so, if you look at Ruby, they invested tens of millions, if not hundreds of millions of dollars over the course of more than a decade to bring Ruby to market and support its marketing. They spent money to develop Hidden Persuaders in cocoa and chocolate and spent a lot of money marketing it. It was not successful. They spent tons of money developing the whole fruit line. I don't think it is as successful as they thought it might be when they introduced it. And when it comes to second generation chocolate, which they launched in Venice in 2022, normally there's a 1 year to 2 year delay. So Callebaut will make big product announcements on an odd year schedule. So 2017, 2019, their COVID was 2021, so it got pushed off to 2022, right? And then the actual product will be introduced a year later. So or so, a year to 18 months later. So I was at Shanghai in 2017 for the Ruby launch, and it was with the Nestle Kit Kat launch in Japan in 2019, January of 2019, that we saw the first introduction of a Ruby product into the marketplace. And so there's normally this delay. The second generation chocolate launch has been delayed indefinitely. And one of the reasons why is that because of how second generation is positioned, uh, it's really expensive. I mean, are we going to be bringing into the marketplace a super premium chocolate when the cost of cocoa is where it is? And why am I saying super premium chocolate? So second generation chocolate has a lot of the hallmarks of a lot of Barry Callebaut innovations, right? Which is that it's not necessarily that they invented the technology. I don't think they invented the technology which is associated with the Ruby. They saw something which happened naturally and they invested resources to bring it to market. Asking an interesting question: why does chocolate have to be brown? It doesn't have to be brown. It's just that it's always been brown because we've focused on oxidized cocoa beans. That's basically it. What happens if we find a way to preserve the original pink and purple colors of cocoa beans? Right? What does that mean? Right? I don't think they were the first company to observe it. I don't think they necessarily figured it out for the first time, but they were the first people to patent it and figured out how to do it at scale. Right. And that is the hallmark, I think, of a lot of Barry Callebaut innovation that I have personally been I can personally attest to in terms of the project launch. When we went to the whole fruit, I don't think that Barry Callebaut invented the idea. In fact, I'm fairly sure they didn't invent the idea of freeze drying cocoa pulp so you could use it as a dry sugar, or how do we go concentrate the pulp in order to make a syrup or a concentrate. I don't think they invented any of that stuff. They saw somebody else do it, and then they figured out how to do it at scale. Right, so, which is pretty, and then invest a lot of marketing in it to get the rest of the world to believe what it is that they're doing. And the people I know who were directly involved in those projects are no longer with the company. They've left it at least 2 to 3 years ago. Right, I won't name names; it's not really important. But their names on the patents, and people that I had correspondence with over the course of several years as a part of this project. And then what happened with second generation chocolate is that what Barry Callebaut claimed they invented, maybe I think they claimed they discovered this, was how to make 2 ingredient chocolate at industrial scale. So if you're not going to add lecithin and you're not going to add cocoa butter, how do you make a 2 ingredient dark chocolate, right, at industrial scale, when none of the processes that you have set up beforehand lend themselves to this, right? So they're taking the ethos of the specialty craft bean to bar movement, which started in the 1990s with Scharfenberger, and they're appropriating it, saying we figured out how to make a healthier chocolate, right? And what's the key? Oh, right, good genetics of cocoa beans, good post-harvest processing. If you have good genetics and you have good post-harvest processing, in other words, you don't have a lot of bitterness in the beans, and you're not over roasting them um, to cover up defects, then you need less sugar. And that sounds a lot like the ethos of the specialty and craft chocolate bean to bar movement, which has been around since the 1990s. And the same thing is true of milk chocolate. You can make a 3 ingredient milk chocolate at industrial scale, right? But if you don't add cocoa butter, you don't add lecithin, you use less sugar, you have a much more expensive chocolate. And so my last correspondence with somebody in the PR department at Barry Callebaut is the second generation chocolate is on hold for the foreseeable future. And I haven't seen anything since April of 2023. There's been no correspondence with me, no news about any new breakthrough, any new product that Callebaut is going to be introducing. Instead, what we find is the opposite. If you go and look at the cacao berry product line, they've been trimming the product line. So there are fewer single origin products, right? So go take a look. If you remember from 4 or 5 years ago, go and take a look at what they're doing now, and you'll find out that they are cutting back on the number of SKUs that they manufacture. Right? And so this is part of the simplify Barry Callebaut. So I have yet to see anything. And if you work for Barry Callebaut anywhere in the world, you're part of R&D out of Zurich, you're with Barry Callebaut Americas, anything about new innovations in the pipeline, let me know, right? Because I would be really interested to know how much new innovation, how much money is being directed to new product R&D, right? As opposed to figuring out how do we make the products we already know how to make cheaper, right? Which is important because, why is this important? Why did Peter Boone get the boot, right? Prior to being CEO of Barry Callebaut globally, he was the president of Barry Callebaut Americas. And he made the movement. And so, as president, I would have met him at a number of events here in the United States before he became the CEO. But then, when he became the CEO, there was a huge muck up at the factory in Visa. There was salmonella, which was introduced into the factory via it was found out to be a contaminated tank load of lecithin, and the entire factory was shut down for months. I mean, the entire production of the largest chocolate factory in the world was shut down for several months while they cleaned it. They recalled any product that could be potentially contaminated. They had to take everything apart. They had to clean it. They had to make sure that there was no contamination before they could restart manufacturing. And that happened while Peter Boone was the CEO. Right? He was not directly responsible for it happening, but as the CEO, he was responsible to his investors for managing it. And I believe that, I mean, they took a huge financial hit, not quite €1 billion, but, or Swiss francs, I mean, a lot of money, right? Over the course of, buying back product, lost productivity, reputational harm, all those things. It suffered a huge hit. It happened on his watch. And while I don't know if the company could have handled it any better than they did, I mean, it is a crisis that needed to be handled. And product was on rationing and it was difficult to get for quite some time. They weren't necessarily able to ship production from Visa Belgium to St. Albans in Vermont or to St. Hyacinth in Canada to serve the Americas market. I mean, they have a lot of factories around the world, but still it's a lot of work that needs to be done to try to pick up the slack. And so I think Peter, I'm fairly confident that Peter is the victim of that plant closure. And Peter Feld came in, and so who was he? Well, he's a mechanical engineer by schooling. He started his career at Procter & Gamble in '92, went to Johnson & Johnson in Bayersdorf, and he gained a reputation for leading troubled consumer goods and equipment companies back to growth through tight cost controls, sharper brand focus, and accelerated digitalization. So, right? But he has no experience in cocoa and chocolate. But the current majority shareholder, which is the Jacobs family, the current majority shareholder brought him in 2023, thinking that what he could do is he could work his magic, the magic that he worked for the previous companies that he worked for, he could work on at Barry Callebaut Group, right? But not knowing anything about cocoa or chocolate, not understanding the importance of the one-to-one relationships that had been built among senior executives and the line managers and the line salespeople in terms of serving their customer base, right? He just said, how can we cut costs? Where can we cut costs, right? How can we go and use computer technology and other digital techniques and marketing, right? Digital marketing and digital strategy to reduce core costs. And apparently the Jacobs are still okay with the way he's handling things. And as long as they're okay with the way he's handling things, his job doesn't appear to be in danger. Now, I don't know how long the Jacobs family, who the majority shareholders with 30 some percent, the largest 30 some percent ownership in the company. So I don't know how long they'll tolerate this unless the stock price begins to rebound. And the point being here is that this is a real challenging time for everybody in the industry, not just small makers who are struggling with the increase in cocoa, and here in the US, the increase in tariffs, which are just insane, right? And are counterproductive. The tariffs are counterproductive at every level, right? I can't apologize for our president. I think he's incompetent from on an international business perspective. I think he's incompetent in other ways as well, but certainly not understanding that it is American companies and American consumers who are paying the tariffs. Yes, money is coming in, but it's not coming in from foreign entities. It's coming, out of the pocketbooks of American companies and American consumers, right? So it remains to be seen. This is a really hard time for everybody, and it affects the smallest chocolate makers and consumers to the biggest chocolate makers in the world. And on top of this, what's going on is that Callebaut is going through this major generational change to its management structure and infrastructure. And this is maybe not the best time to be able to deal with this. It is really, really challenging. It's really, really challenging for them. And what I would have liked to have seen if I was advising the majority investors of Callebaut in this, what I would have said is, you guys need to find an industry veteran, somebody somebody knows cocoa and chocolate inside out, or bring in Feld as a co-CEO, give him aspects over certain kinds of things, and let there be some continuity, right, of management. I mean, who knows how many billions of dollars of institutional knowledge have been lost, right? Knowledge that is in the heads of hundreds, if not thousands of people who have left the company, and it's no longer available to them because it's not in the new systems that this digitalization process is supposed to put together. I mean, it's just really, really, really hard to believe. Now, it turns out that Peter Feld worked at a couple of companies which were owned by the leverage buyout firm KKR, Kohlberg, Kravis, and Roberts. And anybody who knows that company here in the US knows that one of the things they do is they buy companies and then break them up into bits, because individual bits are worth more than the entire company. And if I was really, really cynical, I would go, maybe what Feld is doing is getting ready to blow apart Barry Callebaut. It's not the strangest thing that I have ever heard. I want to go, even though I've got you can't read the comments. And so I'm going to go. So this is Neil Barston. Neil, I think you're still at Confectionery News, as I recall. I'm sorry if I got that right or got that wrong. So great commentary on the topic, Clay. It has been a while. Neil, you're always welcome here, and I really appreciate the comments you got. I too have been wondering about Barry Callebaut's second generation chocolate. I was told last year, unofficially, like yourself, that it was on back burner, given that it was launched in 2022, in probably the most high profile chocolate launch I have ever heard of in Venice. Neil, you weren't in Shanghai, right? And I got to say that when it comes to the way that the members of the press were treated in Shanghai, was at a level which would have been very, very similar to what went on in Venice. I mean, it was really, really quite insane. And many of the same people in a row. So Bas Smit, who is the VP of Global Marketing at the time, managed both events, right? And he's one of the people who's since left the company. So I'm sure you know Bas as well. The fact that there is no sign of what the company hailed as the wonder chocolate that was going to provide the next. Absolutely. I mean, it is radio silent. Although what I do want to point out, if I can, is let me go and hide this and then go to this page on the Barry Callebaut website. And I'm just gonna hide me as well so you can see this, right? So I'm going to link to this page on the post for today. So it talks about the history of more than 175 years of heritage. Don't watch the video. I've already told you it was founded by the merger in '96 by Callebaut and Cacao Berry, right? What are some mergers? What are some major milestones, important milestones? And you can get an idea of what the company is doing by just examining the history of what they think is important and going, what's news? And so none of the things here, there is not a new product, right? Number one, there's been no important milestone in 2025. That is a clue, right? In 2024, none of these things is around new product development, even though on a 2-year cycle, 2022 to 2024, we should have expected some new product announcement anyway. So, but one of the important things, it plans to establish new centers of excellence for artificial intelligence and compound, right? Compound. I don't know what artificial intelligence and compound have to do with each other, except that compound is a chocolate-like substance where there's little to no cocoa butter unless it's in non-defatted cocoa powder, and you're using palm kernel fractions for the most part. I mean, it used to be shea butter and other kinds of fat, but now it's highly targeted palm kernel fractions. As part of its upcoming chocolate and cocoa innovation hub, there's a net zero roadmap strategy, a new strategic partnership with Microsoft, right, as part of BC Next Level. In 2023, what's going on? Oh, they got a business excellence center in Malaysia, a partnership with Nestle, a second chocolate academy in the US located in the heart of New York City. So there's always been the academy that Callebaut has run. It's in the Chicago area. So it's right across the border from St. Hyacinth, which is where they have a manufacturing plant. Why is it in New York City? Because Valrhona has their academy in New York City, and Las Vegas is pretty much a ghost town these days. Callebaut trying to make an inroad and getting people to Las Vegas is going to be a little harder than New York City. Maybe Los Angeles would be better these days across the coast. But in any event, they put this new facility right at the heart of New York City to directly compete with Valrhona, and they're not a direct competitor with Valrhona anymore because they've given up all of their single origin chocolate products. I mean, they're not competing with Valrhona. They certainly don't compete on price. They're looking at a very, very different market. They've got a shipping logistics partnership with Maersk. They appointed a new CEO. They've got new ambitions. That was an important milestone. They have new ambitions, right? Unilever and Barry Callebaut extend a strategic cocoa and chocolate sourcing agreement. That announces. So what's interesting is that the Next Level program, it's hard to know if Next Level, BC Next Level, happened before or after Peter Feld. So this may or may not be in chronological order within each year. But if you want to know more about what they're going to spend 500 million Swiss francs on through 2025 to increase efficiency, digitization, and proximity to markets and customers. Okay, so here we get a sense. So there's a new business excellence center in Malaysia that's closer proximity to customers. There's a new chocolate academy in the US that's maybe closer proximity to customers, right? They've got, so that may be the way we're going to interpret what these things are. But let's go down here to 2022. I'm back in this. So what went on in 2022? There's a new supplier engagement. There's a plant-based chocolate. So this is a term of art which I hate, and Neil, let me know if you hate it too. Plant-based chocolate. Chocolate is made from cocoa beans, right? And sugar, right? All chocolate is plant-based. The only time when you might introduce the idea of plant-based chocolate is when you're making a milk chocolate with a non-dairy milk alternative. So but why are we using plant-based rather than vegan? Is because when you do market research, people respond more positively to the phrase plant-based than they do vegan. There's an aura of militancy, I think, associated with vegans, right, and animal rights, and PETA, perhaps the People for Ethical Treatment of Animals, and so we've got that. Anybody else think the same way about plant-based versus vegan? I think it's marketing speak, and let's call a spade a spade. It's milk chocolate made with non-dairy alternative milks. So they've expanded a new chocolate factory in Australia. Grupo Bimbo, which is one of the largest bakery and bakery-related companies in Central and South America. You can buy some Bimbo products in the United States, but I've seen them in Venezuela or Mexico, all sorts of places, in Brazil, all sorts of places. They established in Ecuador a state-of-the-art cocoa export facility. Yeah, so Ecuador is where much of the technology and inspiration, which was responsible for both Ruby and Whole Fruit, came from. They do have an experimental farm and factory, which is in the state of Guayas, which is west of Guayaquil, around Cerecita. I've been to farms in that area. But I think that the export facility is in the port of Guayas. not exact, or the Port of Guayaquil. I'm not exactly certain where it is. They set up its own distribution network in South Africa. They opened up a new chocolate academy in Morocco, right? But notice that there's no new product development. We go down here. Barry Callebaut introduces second generation of chocolate. And so this is the announcement about, let me close this. This is the announcement about the second generation chocolate. I was in Venice in October in 2022. Neil, I think you were there as well as a bunch of other people. And if you go and read this, what you'll do is you'll find out exactly what second generation chocolate is. And if you're familiar with the ethos of bean to bar, craft specialty chocolate, oh, it's about if you have good genetics and good fermentation, you make better chocolate. And fundamentally, that's what second generation chocolate is all about. If you stop using, you know, if you stop using beans that have grown for productivity, not for flavor, and then you don't ferment them properly, and then you over roast them to hide the defects, you need to have a lot of sugar in order to make a product that tastes any good. And adding sugar and adding milk were the key drivers. Milton Hershey and people in the late 1890s, early 1900s was the key driver. I mean, Milton Hershey's genius is not that he made good chocolate, it's that he made chocolate affordable. Right. And that was by replacing the expensive ingredient, cocoa, with cheap ingredients, milk and sugar. Right. So if you go watch this video, if you go look at this picture, this is Bas Smit. He's the VP of Global Marketing. He's running this. He is facing the Rialto Bridge. So if you've been in Venice and you know where the Rialto Bridge is, you know where we're located. And I'm just off camera to the right here. But if you go play the video, you'll see me in a couple of different vignettes. I mean, I show up in different parts of the video. This was insane. We went to a glass factory in Murano. We went to a workshop where they built gondolas. We went to the home of the Aperol Spritz. It was just an insane launch. And it is the care and the detail that, this guy is known for, to support the market research that Barry Callebaut has done. It's absolutely really insane. You go and watch it. And why aren't they doing it? Why aren't they doing it? Because it's just too freaking expensive. They cannot bring second generation chocolate to market because the price of cocoa beans is so high. So talking to Jin Kim. Hey, Jin, thanks for watching us today. Agree with your opinion on plant-based versus vegan, but I dislike buzzwords in general and just roll my eyes at attempt at marketing obfuscation. Yeah, I agree with you totally. I think it's just really crazy. And second generation chocolate sounds like more marketing hype since craft makers have been making second generation for decades. Absolutely. That's my point. Second generation is just, it's marketing speak, but what they've done is they've taken the ethos and they put a word around it and tried to obfuscate what it is that's going on, right? If you are in fact a chocolate fan and you've been following specialty chocolate since the early 1980s, with the introduction of the first single origin chocolate bars by Bonnat in 1884 for the 100th anniversary of their starting to manufacture chocolate, you can figure out what is that's going on here. But you can go to Barry Callebaut, their website. I'll put a link to it if I haven't already, and you can go watch the video. It's pretty interesting. You'll learn more about it. But that's the last new product innovation that they've talked about. 2022, they spent several $1 million, I would guess, on the launch. I mean, I was in Europe already, so I had went to the Chocolate Portugal festival, so I was in Porto. They flew me from Lisbon to Venice, and then from Venice back to the United States. I was still living in New York at the time, but the Vaporetto trip from the airport to the hotel, the hotel rooms were stupidly expensive. We had insane food. There were a lot of people. They spent millions of dollars on this launch event and seen zero from it. They sent millions of dollars on the launch event for Ruby in Shanghai, and then at a launch event that I went to for Valentine's Day in 2020, just as COVID was happening, I was in Tokyo for an event highlighting Ruby in the Japanese market, and they've invested a lot of money. And my guess is that what they're doing is they have they have changed their minds about how much money they're going to be spending in R&D going forward. And that's a shame because that's one of the things that they know about. So let's we got about 10 minutes left, excuse me, in today's episode. And there are a couple of, just so you know, there may be a couple of other browsers that do this. The new Opera browser may do this, where you can have a page over here and you can interact with a chat agent, whether it's ChatGPT or whether it's an own made or whether it's Mistral or Claude or some other agent. But I got to tell you, it is really, really nice to be able to not leave context. So I have the context of this article. And one of the things that Dia says is, oh, I know that you want me to respond because I've got this highlighted here. I know you want to respond in the context of what's in this page on the left. So it's good. So I've got the history of Barry Callebaut, some innovation milestones, and things like that. But, I asked it about who are the leadership, tell me a little bit about who Peter Feld was, where I got the background on Peter Feld. I wanted to know what the history was of the CEOs. What is Next Level all about? All of this is being done in the context of what's over here, right? And so I cut and paste from some of this research into the post for today's episode. But external industry commentary cited, among other things, on COCO Radar. COCO Radar is written by Tony Myers, who was he at Confectionery News? You're at Confectionery Production, right? So Neil Barson is at Confectionery Production. Thank you for putting it there. And then Tony Myers was at was at Confectionery News and now COCO Radar. Says BC is a much vaunted cost savings program, investing 500 million Swiss francs, hoping to get 250 million in annual savings, through in part reducing the number of different products that it's making. But I'd also suggest getting rid of a lot of senior manager and the salaries that are associated with these associated with this. So I also took a look, and in the context of this article over here, research here is an internal shortcut. What I can do is I can define what Dia calls a skill, and I can say, when I do the shortcut called research, do the following things. And so I don't have to memorize or reuse long, complicated prompts. I can create a shortcut, right? And I can use it that way. So that's what is going on here. So, what is Klaus Jacob's relationship to the Jacob-Suchard dynasty? And so I can learn about this, all in the context of what it is that's going on. So whatever you're doing, having a direct connection, in a side-by-side connection where you can chat and have the history, right, and memory, what's going on is really, really useful. Doing a background about Peter Boone, right? Now, another thing we learn is Callebaut was a signatory to the Harkin-Engel Protocol. They were one of the original founding members of the World Cocoa Foundation, which was founded the year before the Harkin-Engel Protocol was signed. It's interesting. Then I asked it about, Peter Boone was CEO. I asked it what happened in the factory in Visa. Unfortunately, the 27th of June, 2022, the 27th of June is my birthday. Anyway, just so happens to be, salmonella was detected in a batch of chocolate in Visa. The source was traced to a single contaminated tanker of lecithin. The entire factory shut down. Product was destroyed or recalled, right? And it cost them a lot of money. Pulled down net profit 5% year over year for that 1 year. I mean, if you want to find a reason for kicking out a CEO, that's a reason for kicking out a CEO. Now, this got me to talk about, so who are the top 5 institutional shareholders in Barry Callebaut? So Jacobs Investment, I say the Jacobs family, but Jacob-Suchard, but the Jacobs, right, family investment company owns 30% of Barry Callebaut. There's a group called Artisan Partners Limited Partnership USA, which owns a little over 10%. UBS, so the Union Bank of Switzerland, at 6.5%, and BlackRock, right? Why are they involved in this? But what I wanted to know is, who is Artisan Partners, and what has Artisan Partners got to do with anything? And so I took a look at it, and so it turns out that information about the ownership in limited partnerships is hard to come by. So I had to go look at some SEC filings, and here are some SEC filings. And what you'll do is you'll find that there is this nested kind of hierarchy of relationships, that we have Artisan Partners Limited Partnership, right, is part of Artisan Partners, or maybe the umbrella for Artisan Investments, General Partners LLC, right, which is part of Artisan Partners Holdings LP, which is part of Artisan Partners Asset Management Inc. And so I'm not necessarily going to call them shell companies, because we know who the companies are, but we don't know who the investors are in these companies. So there's a 10% ownership of Barry Callebaut, right? We know who manages the money, this investment company called Artisan Partners, but we actually don't know whose money is in the partnership. You can go take a look at Artisan Partners, and you can learn about them and how they invest and all this other kind of stuff. It was an interesting side journey in as I was putting this post together, or this episode together, to think about who are the investors. And so again, there's a private, there's an individual investor. So there's another member of the Yakos family who owns 5%, because I asked for institutional investors. They're not listed in my list of institutional investors. So there's the Yakobs, people related to the Yakobs family that we can directly find out appear to have at least a 35% ownership in Barry Callebaut. So as long as they're happy with the way things are going, Mr. Feld probably doesn't have to worry about his job. A couple more comments. Neil, Toni was indeed at Confectionery News, is now doing a good job at Cocoa Radar. Yes and no, if I can. I mean, I've met Toni personally. I think there are aspects of what it is that he's doing that are very, very interesting. But, one of the challenges that I saw at Confectionery News is they tend to report things at face value. And so there's a lot of stuff, I think, because I subscribe to the newsletter, I'm a Cocoa Radar newsletter subscriber, I do think there's a lot of stuff which is reported at face value and hasn't really thought about what some of the deeper implications are. So, for example, the recent news about, which was reported initially on Popular Science, I did an episode last week on this, Popular Science saying the scientists have discovered the secret of perfect chocolate. Well, he reported that straight. And if you actually go look at the article in Nature Microbiology, what they're doing is they've taken research that has been underway for more than 20 years, right, on controlled fermentation and being able to understand and control the variables, for example, pH and temperature and time. And then what is the microbiome, which is a part of the fermentation pile, right? So this article in Nature Microbiology takes all that research and takes it one step further, right? But the notion of there being a perfect chocolate, what is that all about, right? Is there any such thing as perfect chocolate? Do we want all the chocolate that we coming out? Do we want cocoa beans grown in Colombia to make chocolate which is similar to the chocolate which is made from cocoa beans in Madagascar, which is one of the claims that is made in the research, that we can take some beans in some farms in two areas, Huila and Santander, and be able to bring out flavors which are more reminiscent of Madagascar, whereas I think it's the beans from Antioquia give chocolate which is more reminiscent of the flavor of West Africa. I mean, really, really interesting. But if it's going to cost an extra $50 or $100 per metric ton, right, for the cost of the tailored cultures and the cost of everybody doing things in fermentation boxes above a certain size, right, and the cost of farmer training and all that kind of stuff, at this point in history, is anybody going to go and say, I want to spend more money on cocoa, right? Do I want to increase the cost at the farm gate by $100 a kilo? And I don't know that $100 a metric ton, not $100 a kilo, excuse me, $100 a metric ton. And I don't know anybody right? Who wants to do that at the moment? And so while it's interesting, this is, part of a larger rant about not taking, right, what the reporting is and at face value, right, and being a skeptic and taking a look at things. Strange concept, just a marketing phrase, as you mentioned. So, Neil, if I can, I think that's the plant-based chocolate as opposed to vegan. And then finally, Bas Smit was a great marketing leader for the company. He drove all its best initiatives. I think he probably left when he realized the second generation wasn't happening as advertised. I don't know what prompted Bas to lead. It may be, however, and if I can speculate, I don't want to speak for Bas. It may be that he realized that the kinds of large-scale marketing programs that he had been fostering through. So all of the market research that led to the Ruby launch, all of the market research that led to hidden persuaders, all of the market research that led to whole fruit and that drove the development, the R&D behind those products, all of the market research that substantiated the development of second generation chocolate. If, as part of the new regime which Peter Feld introduced to the company, that was not going to be happening anymore, yes, while it is tied to second generation, I just think it's tied to how is the money, and is he going to be in control of the money the way he had been able to in the past? I think that makes more sense. You can agree to disagree with me there, but just it's a thought. So going back to this idea about Callebaut in crisis, the end of a dynasty. Is it the end of a dynasty? I don't think so. It would require some major misstep internally to not react to market demand properly for Barry Callebaut to fall apart. It would require a complete loss of faith by Jacob's investment to oust Peter Feld as the CEO. Right? I don't know that's going to happen anytime soon. Right? So I don't know that is the end of a dynasty. Could, in a KKR style, could there be a breakup of Callebaut? I don't think so. So in a Bedridge law of headlines kind of way, I don't think this is the end of a dynasty. But what I think everybody needs to pay attention to is that even, right, the big gorilla, even the big players, even the elephant in the room, right, can make huge, almost existential mistakes, right? And part of it is not understanding the nature of the business. Peter Feld, I think, not understanding the nature of the business, even though the Jacobs investment has this, 100, 200, almost 150-year history or more in coffee and chocolate, even though he has access to that. He's driven those people away from him who are around him that have that kind of institutional investment, institutional knowledge, not institutional investment, who understand the history and the heritage. He's taking what it is he learned at a coffee equipment company and a market research company and at Procter and Gamble, right, and at Johnson and Johnson, and said, that cocoa and chocolate are no different from those markets, and they're no different from the companies. And there are. And this is where you can learn, and this is where we can learn, right, about how to respond to the changes that are going on in the marketplace, right? That, yes, right, we can invest in things that are going to make us more efficient, but we can't lose sight of what it is that got us to where we are now. I mean, Callebaut has been known for a long time for certain kinds of innovation, bringing new products to market, irrespective of what you think about their environmental record, irrespective of what you think about their record associated with actually addressing the root causes of illegal labor, right, in West Africa. They were a signatory to the Harkin-Engel Protocol. And here we are 24 years later, right, and they're still haven't addressed the problem. And money that they could be spending on addressing the problem is being spent on building classrooms in Singapore and New York City. Is that the answer to their problems? I don't think so, right? So this is a little bit of a hobby horse here. But if you were a small chocolate maker, right, right? And by small, I mean 100 million or less. If you're a small chocolate maker who's taking a look at just how challenging these times are, right? From an environmental perspective, from a labor perspective, from a cacao sourcing perspective, right? From the nature of innovation. What are you going to do? What are you going to do? What are you going to be able to do? Where are you going to be able to devote your resources to be able to address those challenges? So you don't have 500 million Swiss francs to invest, but do you have $500 to invest or $5,000 to invest? And where are you going to take those funds and make the most use of them? What can you learn, right, from what it is that has been going on in Callebaut? And is this going on at Mondelez? Is this going on at Mars? Is this going on at Nestle? Is this going on at Sucden? Is this going on at Touton? Is that where? Who else? Chocolats Alba, IRCAM, IRCA. I mean, ECAM. I'm sorry, ECAM in Italy, IRCA, which is their U.S. subsidiary, right? If you're a journalist, this is of interest to you. But if you are at all interested, if you're a chocolate maker and you want to know what's going on, you can take these ideas, right, and take the new tools that are available to you through ChatGPT and Mistral and Claude and Google Gemini and these tools, and very, very quickly do some of that research, right? And Neil, if you're still watching and you're still listening, I think you have my email. I've got some interesting insights into chocolate that may make sense with respect to confectionery production. And I've been trying to develop models which may help explain things. So just want to let you know about that. It could be interesting. But that's it for today. I mean, I have been ranting on. I've been not ranting, but I've been going on. I've been, talking like a New Yorker very, very quickly. And just because I wanted to get through the entire topic that I want to talk about. Again, final one from Neil. Completely agree that they need to be fixing the child labor problem before anything else. But more than 2 decades down the line, as you mentioned, it's still a major factor. That's not a sustainable position for them or any other major corporation. It's the thing I find saddest, that you find saddest about this industry, and that it hasn't truly solved the problems. We all live in hope, right? But what we need to do is we need to hold them accountable, right? Until we actually get the people at the Jacobs Investments, right, to say, this is an existential problem for your company. You guys need to focus your investment on this, right? And they're happy with the dividends that are being paid. I don't know that we're going to have much influence. We need to find a way to tip the balance for more of the industry to be preferentially specialty chocolate away from industrial chocolate. And by doing so, what we'll do is we'll have the money where we can influence big chocolate moving forward. My thoughts. And with that, I just want to say thanks, everybody, for being here. It's been really, really interesting for me to do this. I'm going to put some more of the research that I found. I'm going to put it in the post for today because I think it's interesting to know. And just let me know what you think. This episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, like every episode of Pod Safe Chocolate, is sponsored by you, who is listening here. So you can go, if you're watching on YouTube, and do all the things, like, subscribe, click the bell, do all the things that happen and to help spread the word. But go to the Chocolate Life right now, join, become a member, right? There's a free membership tier, which is always appreciated. But if you do have the financial resources to support the work that I'm doing here, I would really, really appreciate you're becoming a member, whatever the level of month, from $500, from $5 a month to $400 or more a year. The upper levels come with coaching, and I can help you on problems and with all of that. And with that, we're at the end of the hour. We've gone a little bit over. We're at the end of the episode for today. And I want to remind everybody as we head out, as I always do at the end of every episode, if you're working with chocolate and you're not having fun, you're doing it wrong. Till the next time, everyone, ciao.